Here's the brief news from the world over this week. The nuclear talks between the Islamic Republic of Iran and world powers have been extended again, this time for just a week. Significant disagreements persist between Iran and the P5+1 group on how and to what extent Iran will scale back its nuclear activities, as well as what types of nuclear research and development Iran could be permitted to conduct under the deal. Iran is demanding an immediate rollback of crippling sanctions, and in what could be a potential deal breaker, Iran has also balked over allowing inspections of Iranian military sites, insisting that its nuclear work is peaceful. The Islamic State is expanding its fight in the Middle East. In the Sinai Peninsula on Wednesday, dozens of ISIS militants launched simultaneous suicide bombing attacks and assaults on security installations. At least 17 Egyptian troops and 90 militants were killed in the fighting. It was Sinai's deadliest attack in decades, and according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, ISIS has executed more than 3,000 people since establishing a caliphate 1 year ago. That number includes 74 children and 86 women. With the start of Ramadan, ISIS has escalated its terror activities, killing dozens in simultaneous attacks in Kuwait, Tunisia, and France. More on ISIS later in the show. And the U.S. announced on Wednesday that formal diplomatic relations would resume between the United States and Cuba for the first time since 1961. In a Rose Garden speech, President Barack Obama also announced the reopening of an embassy in Havana later this summer. He said America doesn't have to live in the past.
With this change, we will be able to substantially increase our contacts with the Cuban people. We'll have more personnel at our embassy, and our diplomats will have the ability to engage more broadly across the island. That will include the Cuban government, civil society, and ordinary Cubans who are reaching for a better life.
Aided in secret talks by Pope Francis and the Vatican, the move comes just 6 months after the U.S. and Cuba made a surprise announcement in December that they would normalize relations. Some congresspeople warned in statements this week that the latest move could legitimize a dictatorship and shows no regard for the religious and human rights of the Cuban people. And it is not a tragedy just yet, but the Greek drama continues. Grecian creditors have halted bailout negotiations with the country's government after a deadline to pay back billions of euros came and went this week. Taking center stage is a referendum on whether to accept financial reforms and continued austerity measures in exchange for more bailout loans. The Prime Minister of Greece has staunchly advocated a no vote, but European officials and the Greek opposition have warned that a no vote would mean leaving the euro and put Greece into deeper economic peril. The country remains in limbo with banks mostly shut and strict cash withdrawal limits imposed until after the referendum. And in another jolt to the world financial system, Puerto Rico is seeking negotiations with its bondholders over $72 billion of debt. Governor Alejandro Garcia Padilla announced on Monday that the U.S. territory cannot make good on its payments. Left unchecked, both Greece and Puerto Rico face an economic collapse. Markets worldwide turned south this week. And there was a small flurry of decisions from the U.S. Supreme Court as it closed out its term this week. On Monday, the High Court put on hold a Texas abortion law, allowing the state's 19 abortion clinics to remain open. The justices voted 5-4 to grant an emergency appeal from the clinics before the new abortion law went into effect. The law requires most of the state's abortion facilities to meet the same safety standards as other surgical centers. It also requires abortion doctors to have admitting privileges to local hospitals. The Supreme Court will decide in the fall whether to hear the case. Meanwhile, the Oklahoma Supreme Court has ruled that a Ten Commandments monument on its Capitol grounds is a religious symbol and must be removed. In a 7-2 decision, the court said the display violates Oklahoma's constitutional ban on the use of public space to favor a particular religion. The court said the Ten Commandments, chiseled into a 6-foot-tall slab of granite, are, quote, obviously religious in nature and are an integral part of the Jewish and Christian faiths, end quote. The ruling overturns a previous decision by a district court judge who determined the monument could stay in place. And New Jersey Governor Christie returned to his high school alma mater in Livingston, New Jersey this week to announce his candidacy for President of the United States.
I have spent the last 13 years of my life as U.S. Attorney and Governor of this state fighting for fairness and justice and opportunity for the people of the state of New Jersey. That fight has not made me more weary. It has made me stronger, and I am now ready to fight for the people of the United States of America.
The Republican governor becomes the 14th major contender in the 2016 GOP nomination. He touted his ability to work across the aisle. Christie faces an uphill battle in the wake of last year's so-called Bridgegate controversy and a sluggish New Jersey economy. Also, former Virginia Senator Jim Webb has leapt into the race to be the Democratic presidential nominee. Webb promises to bring bipartisan solutions to the country. He is the 5th Democrat to enter the presidential sweepstakes. And the Vatican on Tuesday released Pope Francis's itinerary for his upcoming visit to the U.S. The Pope's 3-city tour begins in Washington, D.C. on September 22nd, where he'll be met at the White House by President Obama. He becomes the first pope to address a joint session of Congress and will preside over the canonization of Junipero Serra. Then in New York, the Pope will speak at the United Nations and celebrate Mass at Madison Square Garden. In Philadelphia, he'll join the Church's World Meeting of Families, and in between, very tellingly, the Pope will host a meeting for religious liberty on Independence Mall with immigrants and the Hispanic community. He'll visit a soup kitchen for the homeless in D.C. and a prison in Philadelphia. The final Mass on September 27th is expected to draw 1.5 million faithful in what could be the largest gathering on U.S. soil ever. And the Vatican is doubling down on its fight against climate change, recruiting help from outside the faith. Canadian journalist, eco-crusader, and virulent anti-capitalist Naomi Klein was tapped this week to participate in a climate change conference at the Vatican. A self-described secular Jewish feminist, she was invited to the event by the president of the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, Cardinal Peter Turkson. During a Vatican press conference on Wednesday, Klein said she shared the Pope's opinion that today's economics are adversely affecting the environment.
That's why a new kind of climate movement is fast emerging. It is based on the most courageous truth expressed in the encyclical, that our current economic system is both fueling the climate crisis and actively preventing us from taking the necessary actions to avert it.
Earlier in the week, climate change activists from around the world gathered in Rome to praise the Pope for issuing his environmental encyclical. And in his Sunday Angelus, Francis saluted the marchers, welcoming them to St. Peter's Square. And finally, Nicholas Winton, the man who almost single-handedly saved more than 650 Jewish children from the Holocaust, has died. He was 106. Earning the label Britain's Schindler, Winton was a 29-year-old stock exchange clerk in 1938 when he began to fear, correctly, that Jewish residents of Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia would be sent to concentration camps. Winton arranged trains to carry Jewish children from occupied Prague to Britain, battling bureaucracy at both ends and saving them from almost certain death. Not wanting any attention in the matter, he kept quiet about his exploits for half a century. What a hero. May Nicholas Winton rest in peace.